There's one thing that can make or break your entire life. It's not luck. It's not talent. It's how you communicate. The way you speak, the way you listen, the way you respond, it decides your relationships, your opportunities, your confidence, your respect. But most people are held back not because they're not smart, but because they're making small, silent mistakes in communication every single day. And these mistakes cost them peace, cost them connection, cost them success. Today, I'm not here to teach you how to talk better. I'm here to show you what's silently blocking you. Because if you don't fix these communication mistakes, nothing in your life changes. But when you do, everything changes. We live in a world where everyone is talking, but very few are truly listening. And the mistake most people make in communication is simple. They listen only to reply, not to understand. When someone speaks, your mind instantly prepares a response. You're already rehearsing words before they even finish theirs, and that's how most conversations fail without you even realizing. Because listening to reply means one thing: you're focused on yourself. You're listening only to protect your opinion, to defend your ego, or to prove a point. But communication is not about you. It is about connection. It is about understanding another human being without judgment, without rushing in with your solution, without trying to fix everything in the first 5 seconds. Most relationships don't lack love, they lack listening. Most arguments don't start with anger, they start with misunderstanding. And misunderstandings don't come from what is said, they come from what is not heard. That's why people repeat themselves. That's why people feel unseen. That's why people slowly stop opening up. They don't feel safe. They don't feel heard. And when someone doesn't feel heard, they either shout or they shut down. Good communication isn't about having the perfect answer. It's about giving someone the space to express their imperfect feelings. But when you listen only to reply, you rush their process. You interrupt their thoughts. You make them feel like they need to finish faster just so you can speak. That kills trust. That kills healthy relationships. And the truth is, your reply might be smart, but if the other person doesn't feel understood, your words won't matter. Listening to understand is about slowing down your mind. It's about giving full attention. This means eye contact. This means not touching your phone. This means not forming your argument before they finish theirs. This means being curious, not defensive. Try asking yourself one powerful question during every conversation. What is this person really trying to say beneath their words? Because sometimes sadness looks like anger. Sometimes fear looks like silence. Sometimes a person's tone isn't disrespect, it's disappointment. And you only see that when you listen beyond the reply. Communication improves the moment your goal stops being, I need to answer this, and becomes, I need to understand this. When you listen deeply, you respond differently, your tone softens, your ego relaxes, your words become wiser. Understanding someone doesn't mean agreeing with them. It simply means respecting their perspective enough to let them finish. And when someone feels understood, something powerful happens. They become open to hearing you. They become open to change. They become open to solutions. That is how communication becomes healing instead of competitive. That is how conversations build trust instead of walls. You don't need to fix people. You don't need to win every argument. You just need to listen long enough to understand them. Because when people feel understood, they don't need perfect answers, they just need presence. And presence is the rarest form of communication today. Look at your own life. How many times did you feel worse after sharing how you feel? How many times did someone give advice before they even knew your situation? How many times did someone say, just get over it? Don't think like that. You need to calm down. That isn't listening. That is reacting. And reacting doesn't make people feel heard. It makes them feel alone. You'll notice a shift when you start listening with patience. People will speak more gently. Arguments will feel less like battles. Even in conflict, listening builds safety. It says, I don't need to agree with you to respect you. I don't need to fix you to understand you. I don't need to speak to show strength. Sometimes silence is stronger. The greatest communicators aren't the ones with the strongest voice. They are the ones who make others feel safe to use theirs. Listening to understand doesn't make you passive. It makes you powerful. Because you begin to see clearly, you stop talking over emotion, you stop assuming intentions, you stop reacting to tone and start responding to truth. Real listening is rare. That's why most people don't succeed in relationships, leadership, negotiations, or love. And yet it is the simplest change you can make today. You don't need training. You don't need scripts. You just need one decision. I will listen to understand, not to reply. That decision alone changes your conversations, your relationships, and your reputation. People remember how you made them feel. And if you make people feel heard, they will respect your silence more than they ever respected your words. That is how you become someone worth listening to. That is how powerful communication truly begins. Most people don't realize this, but in every conversation they enter with an invisible goal to prove they're right. They don't communicate to connect. They communicate to defend, and when your goal is to win, you've already lost the opportunity to be respected. The problem with many arguments in relationships, workplaces, And friendships is that people think respect comes from dominance. They believe that if they correct someone, outsmart someone, or overpower someone with logic, they'll earn respect. But respect is never taken. It is given. And people only give it when they feel valued, not defeated. When you communicate just to be right, you stop listening, your words get louder, your body language gets sharper, your patience gets shorter. And in that moment, even if your point is correct, your approach is wrong. And when your approach is wrong, your message will never land. Because truth without kindness creates resistance. Logic without empathy creates distance. A good point delivered in a bad tone becomes a bad point. People forget your argument, but they remember how small you made them feel. That's why being right doesn't build deep relationships. You don't gain influence by being the loudest voice in the room. You gain influence by being the calmest. Sometimes the strongest communicator is the one who doesn't need to win. There are people who need the last word in every conversation. They need to explain everything. They need to clarify every detail. They feel anxious when someone misunderstands them. They carry this pressure of being perfect all the time, and that pressure ruins the relationship they're trying to protect. When you communicate with the goal of being right, your mind becomes a courtroom. You start collecting evidence. You start assuming intentions. You listen only to pick apart someone's sentence, and communication stops being a bridge. It becomes a battle. But when you communicate to be respected instead, something changes, your tone shifts, your body language opens up. You don't need to rush your words. You don't need to interrupt. You start caring about the relationship more than the argument. And people feel that. They notice that your ego is not leading the conversation. Your intention is. And intention is everything. Because a good communicator isn't someone who always says the perfect thing. A good communicator is someone who creates an environment where the other person feels safe even in disagreement. Respect doesn't come from being right. It comes from being fair. It comes from showing that your goal isn't to win. Your goal is to understand. That alone reduces tension. It makes conflict easier to navigate. It makes the other person feel like your presence is not a threat. When someone feels respected, they won't fight your ideas. They'll listen to them. If people feel attacked, they shut down. If they feel judged, they get defensive. But when they feel respected, they become open. And open minds are the only minds that change. Another mistake people make is using words like weapons. Sarcasm, harsh tone, passive-aggressive silence, dramatic sighs. These are not signs of strength. They're signs that your ego is scared. A strong communicator doesn't need to pressure someone to agree. A strong communicator knows that the right message delivered at the wrong time is still the wrong message. And that's where timing comes in. You don't need to respond instantly. You don't need to prove your point the moment you feel challenged. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to say, "Let me think about that." You are allowed to say, "I understand your point." Pausing doesn't weaken your side, it strengthens your clarity. Sometimes the most powerful response is the one that comes later when emotion has left the room and reason has entered it. Emotional reactions break respect. Calm responses build it. A great question to ask yourself before any reply is, do I want to win this conversation or do I want to improve this relationship? That question alone can change the outcome. If your only goal is to be right, you'll forget the person in front of you is human. They have fears, habits, wounds, and triggers just like you. They have moments when they don't feel good enough. They have moments when they need reassurance, not correction. And sometimes in communication, the real issue isn't the topic of the argument, it's the emotion behind it. They may not be upset about what you said. They may be upset about how you made them feel. They may not be arguing to prove anything. They may just want to feel heard. They may not need you to solve the problem. They may need you to show patience. Communicating to be respected means putting ego aside and making space for emotional truth. It means realizing that connection is stronger than correction. It means realizing that the tone is louder than the words. And that respect does not come from winning. It comes from restraint. When people feel respected, they don't need you to agree with them. They just need to know that disagreement won't make you disrespect them. That safety creates honesty. Honesty builds trust. Trust builds strong communication. There will be times when silence is wiser than explanation. There will be moments when stepping back is stronger than pushing forward. There will be conversations where listening earns more respect than speaking. True confidence is not when you have the perfect answer. It's when you don't fear not having one, and when you develop that confidence, your communication changes forever. You gain respect without demanding it. You express truth without forcing it. You speak gently and people listen deeply. Because when pressure leaves your voice, power enters it. Every relationship improves when the goal shifts from being right to being respectful. Every conversation improves when ego steps back and intention steps forward. And the more you value respect, the less you'll need to win. Not every question needs your explanation. Not every argument needs your energy. Not every battle deserves your time. And when you choose respect over ego, your words won't just be heard, they'll be remembered. One of the most common but invisible mistakes in communication is the fear of silence. So many people feel uncomfortable when a conversation pauses. They think silence means something is wrong. They think silence makes them look weak, awkward, or unprepared. So they rush. They fill every gap with words, with explanations, with nervous laughter, with over-talking. What they don't realize is that silence doesn't break connection. It builds it. Silence gives space for thoughts to settle. Silence allows emotions to breathe. Silence shows that you are not desperate to prove anything. And in communication, nothing is stronger than quiet confidence. When you rush to speak, you don't listen. You don't observe body language. You don't notice the other person's tone. You miss the subtle signs, the hesitation, the discomfort, the shift in posture that reveal what they truly feel. That's why many people talk a lot, but still don't understand the person in front of them. They are speaking, but not connecting. They are answering, but not aligning. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing, because silence creates space for truth to surface. Silence shows maturity. It tells the other person, I don't need to control this moment. I don't need to perform. I don't need to rush toward a conclusion. I'm here, fully present. And presence is stronger than pressure. When someone feels your presence, they open up. They begin to share more. They begin to feel safe. But when they feel your pressure, they close down. They begin to shorten their answers. They become guarded. They start saying what you want to hear, not what they really want to say. Many people lose trust not because they spoke wrongly, but because they didn't allow silence to reveal the right words. In personal relationships, silence is often mistaken as disinterest. In reality, silence can be the deepest form of care. When someone is emotional, they don't always need immediate advice. They need space to feel. They need space to process their thoughts. They need space to take a breath. If you rush in with solutions too quickly, you unintentionally send the message that their emotions make you uncomfortable. And when someone feels that, they hesitate to share next time. But when you are comfortable with silence, you send the message that their emotions are safe with you. You are not judging, you are not rushing, you are allowing their words to find the right pace. Silence in communication is like punctuation in writing. Without pauses, everything becomes one confusing sentence. Without breathing space, the message loses power. Without room to reflect, nothing truly lands. Great communicators understand timing. They know that sometimes silence holds more value than explanation. They know that after asking a question, the most respectful thing is to wait, to actually wait, not to stare at your phone, not to fidget, not to change the topic, to simply wait patiently and let the other person think. That is how real answers come. That is how honest conversations happen. And that is how respect grows. Even in professional environments, silence is a sign of strength. The best negotiators don't always talk the most. They listen the most. They use silence strategically. They ask a question, and then they wait. That pause often makes the other person reveal more than they intended, because silence makes people fill the space with truth. But when you fear silence, you rush. And when you rush, you lose control of the conversation. Communication is not a race. It is a rhythm. And when your rhythm is too fast, connection becomes too weak. Social anxiety often grows from the fear of silence. People think they must always be interesting, always witty, always in control of the conversation. They believe they need the perfect words instantly. But real connection doesn't need perfection. It needs sincerity. And sincerity doesn't always look like words. Sometimes it looks like eye contact, a calm posture, a listening face. These things speak louder than words ever could. When you stop fearing silence, you start noticing what actually matters. You start paying attention to energy, not just sentences. You begin to understand what someone means, not just what they say. You begin to spot hesitation, uncertainty, pain, confusion, excitement, fear, all through silence. And when you begin to understand those silent signals, your communication becomes deeper than language. You won't need long explanations. You won't need perfect speeches. You'll simply know when to speak and when to pause. And that balance creates powerful connection. The fear of silence often comes from insecurity. People think that if they stop speaking, they will lose control. But in truth, when you stop speaking, you gain control. You see clearly, you think clearly, you listen clearly, you create clarity. Silence gives you time to choose wiser words instead of impulsive ones. It gives you the ability to regulate your emotions before expressing them. It prevents you from saying things you'll regret. Silence is not the absence of communication. It is the guardian of communication. It protects the conversation from chaos and impulsiveness. It protects the relationship from unnecessary tension. It protects your peace by giving your mind a moment to reset. Learning to be comfortable with silence is one of the greatest communication skills you can build. And it is simple to start. When the conversation pauses, don't rush to fill it. Let it be. When someone is thinking, don't interrupt. Let them process. When emotions rise, don't push toward an answer. Give space. Space builds trust. Trust builds respect. Respect builds communication. And at the heart of communication, silence is not the enemy. It is the oxygen. Instead of fearing silence, learn to use it. Learn to breathe with it. Learn to let your message settle before you push forward. You don't need to always have something to say. You don't need to always have the perfect comeback. You don't need to always be ready with an answer. Sometimes power sits in the pauses. Sometimes clarity waits in the quiet. And sometimes the most meaningful words arrive only after you gave them room to breathe. When your presence becomes stronger than your need to speak, the quality of your communication transforms. People feel safer around you. They start trusting you more. They share deeper things. They feel understood without judgment. They start respecting your silence more than they ever respected someone else's noise. And in a world full of loud voices trying to dominate every conversation, the one who listens, waits, and observes quietly often becomes the one everyone listens to the most.